The Demon of Christmas. Tom and James were preparing for the Christmas party at Jack's house. Tom put the turkey in the oven. James was handling pizza and the steak. Out in the living room, Jack was decorating the Christmas tree. Everything was set. The three of them sat down at the dining table and enjoyed their meal. Tom and James tried to get Jack drunk. They had a surprise for him. Just a few minutes later, Jack was getting tipsy. His face turned red. His body was blazing hot. He passed out at the table. Tom and James looked at each other with big grins. They brought Jack to his bedroom. On his bed, there was a girl named Lily sleeping. The thin silk blanket couldn't cover her beautiful body. Her white skin glowed in the dark, smooth and flawless. Jack turned and touched her body unintentionally. The silk blanket slipped away, revealing her divine body. Jack was startled to see a naked woman in front of him. The wind blew into the room, tossing the curtain to shake rapidly. In the windy room, two bodies became one. Tom and James closed the door, leaving the two inside. They got back into the dining room when suddenly a strong, cold wind blew through and sent shivers down their spines. Rubbing his hands together, Tom carved the steak. A stream of blood poured out, dripping out of the plate, and Tom terrifyingly dropped his fork and knife. The bell rang. Tom walked out and opened the front door, but there was no one outside. He angrily slammed the door, but was shocked when he saw a picture of a pretty young girl. Her smile was oddly familiar. Fear flooded his mind. Tom rushed outside, spinning around to look at everything to make some sense of this. But there was no one else out there. Tom brought the picture to James. They looked at each other, not saying a word. A deathly silence surrounded the room. On Jack's birthday 7 years ago, Tom and James also set up a girl for Jack. She was only 13 years old, and Jack was just a shy boy, so he didn't do anything, just fell asleep. Seeing Jack didn't do anything, Tom and James regretted all the work they had done to trick her into coming over. They dragged her out, stripped her naked, and raped her. The girl woke up feeling so much pain. She struggled hard, begging them to stop, but it was no use. Her crying and begging only fueled their beastly desires. Blood streamed down her legs. She hugged her belly and cried her eyes out. Tom and James, after satisfying their needs, crashed down to the bed. The girl saw this window of opportunity and ran towards the living room, but Tom saw right through her. He stepped out and tossed the girl back into the room. Then he and James beat her without mercy, banging her head against the bedstand. Blood splashed everywhere, streaming down her young and beautiful face. Her thin, sexy collarbone, her peaky, snow-white breast, her body was soaked in her own blood. Tom and James feared for their future if this got out. They cleaned up and buried the poor young girl in Jack's backyard. The next day, Jack found out what his friends had done, but he did nothing, scared of turning his friends in. Inside Jack's bedroom, two shadows were humping in harmony. Lily suddenly shivered. Her mouth opened wide. Her eyes rolled back into her head. Jack was frightened when he saw Lily's expression. Her nails magically turned long and sharp, and then she stabbed into Jack's neck. Outside, the kitchen light turned off all of a sudden. Tom and James fearfully looked around. Lily slowly walked out of Jack's room, staring at them, her eyes filled with rage. Lily screamed. Her hair flew into the air. She pointed her sharp nails at Tom. Tom feared for his life. He ran to the front door, doing everything he could to try and open the door, but it was locked tight. Lily quickly flew over and grabbed Tom by his neck. She squeezed tight. Her fingers slowly penetrated into his skin. Lily banged Tom's head against the wall again and again until his face was unrecognizable. His breath left his body. James, scared out of his wits, collapsed down and begged for mercy. Lily laughed, a demonic laugh. She came to James, lifted him, and threw him out of the window. James crashed down to the floor. He died instantly. Bella was on her way out for a Christmas party, but she stopped when she saw James fly through a window. She saw Lily, who stank of death. Lily burst out laughing with the voice of a demon. Bella instantly struck out her whip and struck at Lily. Lily growled in pain. A demon flew out of Lily's body. It was the girl who was raped 7 years ago. Dying a horrible death, she couldn't leave this world in peace. Her soul was filled with vengeance. She turned into a demon, waiting to get her revenge. The demon screamed loudly, charged at Bella, and tried to strangle her, lifting her off of her feet. In the brief moment before her end, a strange man appeared. He pulled out a demonic-looking knife and stabbed the demon right in the head. The demon screamed in pain, screeching and tumbling down to the floor, then disappeared. Bella collapsed to the floor. Next to her, an artifact piece appeared. She crawled up, putting the piece into her bag. Subscribe now to My Novels to enjoy a journey of the best mystical, magical, and mysterious stories.